Hello and welcome back. This is a second recording today, and this one was unplanned. And in fact, usually I organize my thoughts and notes, and I didn't take the time to do this because we're trying to squeeze this in right now, or I'm trying to squeeze this in to let you know the absolute craziness that's going on in Santa Clara County here in Silicon Valley. It's absolutely insane what we're witnessing. So today I was at one of the libraries. I had an impromptu meeting. I needed to have a Zoom session. So I went to the library, waited for it to open, 10 o'clock in the morning. I walked in. I asked if there were spaces available. The gentleman told me that I'd need to go to the front to reserve the space. I looked up and there were a bunch of moms there. They probably had a mommy and me thing. I don't know, but they were all around the front desk. So I went to a quiet area in the corner and just started my meeting thinking, no problem. Once the line went down, I went back up to the front desk and it was two people that weren't up there before. The other one was a gentleman. And now there were two people. Only now am I going to say this. I would identify them as female voices, but they were hard to tell behind the masks that they're wearing. But that's what it was. So I asked if there were any spaces available. They said yes, but I needed my ID or my library card. I didn't have it. I said, thank you. I started to walk away. They said they could look it up in the system. So they went through every email address I have and every phone number address I have, because I don't know, that account's so old. I don't know what is associated with it. And I don't normally give that. I usually have the card with me. Finally, they had me write down my name. So I wrote down my name and bingo, they found it right away. So that would have been the easy path. But meanwhile, again, there's two of them. They both have masks on, so I cannot see what they're saying. And I rely on that very, very heavily because my hearing just isn't strong anymore. I really have always relied on being able to read lips in order to get the context of the emotion and also at least enough words to move forward. So as I'm standing there, each one is talking louder and louder and over each other, and I'm just patiently waiting. And finally, they say that yes, there's a slot. And I asked them several times if there's going to be, if I need to come back with the ID later to get that slot. And they said no, we've gone ahead and assigned your library card to it because they were able to find in the system. Okay, that was nice. Thank you. So I go and I sit back in this quiet place that I'd been sitting, and I'm working on some reports, preparing for that Zoom meeting that I needed to have. And two police officers show up. And this is where it's absolutely bizarre and inexcusable. So I look up and there's two officers there with their badges flashing. They tell me they're not officers, they're something else, but they work for the city. They have a badge and they have a right to arrest. So I don't know what that something else actually is, but they said I don't have to talk to them, but if I would like to, I could. And I said, thank you. I don't have a need to speak with you, but I'm certainly, if you want to ask me anything, you can. And they said, wow, you're really open. That's very kind. And for gentlemen to say that, I thought that was odd. But I thought, what have they been told? So apparently they were called by those two individuals that were at the checkout counter and were told that there was an incident. And I said, okay, I didn't know there was an incident. Can you tell me what happened, or more importantly, what I did wrong? And the response was, I was rude. And I said, okay, would you like to tell me, one, how I was rude, two, how not being polite by somebody else's standards moves to the point of calling the police, and three, why am I being harassed and threatened now? And again, I just casual conversation back. I was trying to keep it light, but in my head, I'm thinking, this is why I don't want to be in California anymore. This happens all too often. Luckily not to me, but I'm seeing that it's happening more and more. So they respond that no, there really wasn't an incident. he just went in again to the rudeness, and I asked again for clarification by somebody else's standards what that was, and he didn't have anything. And I said, okay, can I please have the incident number and the badge number? And if I need to follow up later, I at least have that as a reference. And he said, yes. The other person gave me a card. He said he didn't have one, but he gave me his name and showed me the badge. And I asked, does this move to the point of arrest? And so here it is. I wasn't actually arrested, although apparently I was being detained. Although if I would have walked away, they wouldn't have done anything. That was very unclear. But apparently they're called by that particular library very, very often. And so that was an interesting data point that the officer told me. What is going on in this particular library that elicits random calls to people who are quietly sitting in a corner to have taxpayers pay for this? And quite honestly, at this point, I'm wondering, what kind of mental illness are we dealing with that this is okay? So I went ahead and asked if it was still okay for me to go upstairs, because there was obviously some kind of disagreement, even though I didn't know what it was. Could I go upstairs to the room that was reserved when my time was available? And they went back and talked to the manager, and the manager handed them the card and handed it to me and said, yes, you can go upstairs. And so when my time became available, I gathered my belongings and went upstairs. But I had asked them too, when the manager could please come out here and speak with me. And the manager chose not to. So I went upstairs. I had a 2-hour time slot, 11 to 1 upstairs. And I sat there until a little past 12:30. And again, manager hadn't shown up yet. So I looked at my rights and I filled out, I went to ChatGPT because I'm using AI for everything right now. And what I did is I created a formal complaint, investigation report, and public records request for this particular branch, because the individuals who thought it was okay to take taxpayer money to work in a role and treat customers like this, or clients or patrons, whatever we're called, is absolutely inexcusable. Because what if I wasn't rational? What if I was intimidated by those police officers? Immediately, that could have escalated in so many bad directions, all because people didn't know how for themselves to behave in a professional environment. So I gone ahead and drafted this. Now, this is the abbreviated version that I gave directly to the to this location. And the reason I did that is under the California Public Records request, with an ADA request, you can give it to them either verbal or in writing at the location without having to go to some portal and get a, that you never hear back from. So this put them on notice, saying, wait a minute, I happen to be an educated individual. What you did to me was harassment and intimidation, and we as taxpayers just are not going to tolerate this. If you cannot behave yourself in your job, you don't deserve to work there, is my stance with this. But I can't make that decision. So what I did is I addressed this, and I had them put the date on it, and that would be their form of stamping it, make a copy for me. They kept the original and gave me a copy. And in 10 days, I'll go back in, and they can either provide to me the collateral that I'm asking for, or they can ask for another 14-day extension. So we'll see in 10 days. I'll give you an update as to what occurred here. I also notified the director of the program separately via email. And again, normally things like this, you just let pass. If you have a disagreement with somebody, or somebody is rude to you, I mean, it happens. People may be not paying attention. They have a different culture. That they can't hear you. There's a lot of reasons why this can happen. I don't know where we got to call in the police. So I said, this correspondence serves as a formal complaint request for investigation and request for records pursuant to California Public Records Act request, Government Code 6250, etc., concerning an incident that occurred at this library circulation desk at approximately this time on this date. And I stated libraries are public institutions intended to provide a quiet, respectful environment for community members. The events that occurred during this interaction raised serious concerns regarding staffing conduct, supervisory oversight, and the appropriateness of contacting law enforcement or security in response to routine patron interactions. Incident summary. So I gave them a little summary of what happened. And quite honestly, from my perspective, they were both yelling at me because not at me, but I was standing there in front of them and they were talking over each other progressively louder with their volume with masks covering their face. And so I just gave them a lot of time to say what they needed to say. I did my best in trying to guess what they were asking for. They were asking for my PII, personal information, which was extremely uncomfortable for me to have to provide that to these individuals who didn't seem grounded to begin with, but that was the step and they already had it in the system in order to reserve the room. So I patiently went along with it. But they were the ones covering their mouths, making it difficult to hear, and raising their voices, yelling over each other. So that's fine. Once they informed me that I couldn't have a room, I didn't have an ID, I walked away. That's fine, thank you. And I went back to where I was, and then they called me back again. So I asked for a copy of the video camera, the video that records over that circulation desk for that period of time to prove my behavior of non-confrontational. I was on the other side of the desk. I never encroached upon them. I never had any crazy arm or body movements. And so evidence that even when they said no, I turned and walked away. And then they brought me back and I did that. And then I walked away when we were done. So this request for us as individuals is becoming really important to let our government know that you work for us, and not to be demeaning by that. But if you want a paycheck based on taxpayer money in the public space, this is not how we behave. So I stated here then the interaction with the police, and I stated no specific conduct was identified or even clarified when I requested, other than rude. A polite police is not how we behave in this society, and yet we can see constantly on TikTok or different videos that when somebody posts something wrong, they get a police at their door. So was this intimidation and harassment? I don't know, but it was inappropriate. This response resulted in public embarrassment, and this raises questions regarding proportionality, policy, compliance, and appropriate use of public resources. A request to speak with the on-duty manager was made, and the patron, being me, the person there indicated, I'm sorry, reading this part here. I am the patron, and I indicated I would be available and I would be up in the room. So I wasn't hovering or waiting. They knew where the room was that I had reserved, and whenever comfortable, the manager could come by there. However, no manager came by for more than 90 minutes. Actually, at that point, it was almost 2 hours. So I'm requiring a request for investigation. They can opt in to do this, or they don't have to, but this is the first step that I'm pulling through in case there's additional incidences there. I'm requesting that the public library conduct a formal investigation into 1, conduct of the circulation desk staff involved at this time on this date at that branch. 2, actions and response of the duty manager. Why was it important that they call the police and yet the manager wasn't involved? Number 3, the decision-making process that resulted in contacting law enforcement or security, including whether applicable policies were followed. So then I went further and specifically outlined the California Public Records Act request. Pursuant to the CPRA, Government Section 6253C, agencies are required to determine within 10 days, calendar days, whether a request seeks disclosable records and to promptly notify the requester of that determination. So within 10 days, they have to let me know whether or not what I'm requesting is something that by law they have to disclose. Some of it may be, some of it may not be. And then they don't have to disclose in 10 days. At 10 days, they tell me what they'll move forward with. And then from there, they have 14 days that they have to comply and provide that information. Accordingly, I hereby request that the following public records related to the PUV incident be provided. And there's 10 different items here. And if you want to fast forward through this, you can. But if it's helpful for you and you've had an interaction, I went to ChatGPT, and you could use this transcript to put in there to outline with your incidents as well. Number one, any incident reports, logs, notes, emails, or internal communications related to the circulation desk interaction at about that time and that date at that location. Number two, records identifying who authored or initiated contact with law enforcement or security, including timestamps and method of contact, whether it was phone, radio, dispatch system. Number three, security or police call logs for this branch for the 12 months preceding. How often are they doing this? Number four, policies, procedures, and training materials that govern A, when library staff may contact law enforcement or security. B, de-escalation and patron interactions. C, handling allegations of rude, disruptive, or inappropriate patron behavior. And what defines which? Number five, records of customer service, de-escalation, or public interaction training applicable to the circulation desk staff. What have they been taught? Number six, supervisor or managerial review procedures required after staff initiate law enforcement or security contact with a patron. What is the review when they do that? 7, what are the pay rates and job classifications for the two people that were at the circulation staff? And I can't ask their PII, even though they had mine. I can't ask theirs. I can ask for the classification. I can also ask the on-duty manager, pay and job classification, and then also that of the responding officers. The library may or may not be able to provide that of the responding officers. I don't know the oversight, but since they're all city employees, it should all go to one city entity and be delivered from there. So I believe that that should be provided under this particular incident. Number 8, any body-worn camera footage, audio recordings, or related metadata generated by responding officers in connection with this incident, or documentation describing how records may be requested. Number 9, redacted complaint histories, if any, related to similar incidents at this branch. Number 10, the city and the library policies that are concerning the placement and accommodation of employees with employment challenges or mental health consideration in public-facing roles. So if any portion of this request is denied or withheld, please identify the specific statutory exemption relied upon and provide all reasonably segregable non-exempt portions of response records as required by government code, the section. Please confirm receipt of this request and provide the required CPRA determination with the statutory timeframe. Electronic delivery of records is preferred. However, I also stated that I will return back to that location in the 10 business days to get a response, to make it easy for them, but also to let their employees know that this behavior is not acceptable. This is not how we treat one another. If in fact somebody is rude to you and you're in a customer service environment, often we just quiet, right? Somehow we're in an aggressive society where people lash out at one another, but now you're quiet. And if you have a complaint, you go to your supervisor, and then the supervisor will handle it. That's what normally happens. But as professionals and people, if somebody says, you were rude to me, that hurt my feelings. Oh, then the other person says, I absolutely apologize. I wasn't aware of that. You don't call the police. That just seems so odd and a pattern, because what's going on in the libraries is we have a lot of individuals who have lost their jobs. They're in the libraries all day long. It's a safe, warm, or cool place to be. There's, water fountains. There's usually snack areas. It's a place of entertainment, whether that's reading or computer access to videos. It's a way to fill somebody's day in a safe space. But if somebody is mentally having a rough time, I don't mean mentally unstable, but just having a rough time, and all of a sudden two officers pop up, there could be an escalation very, very quickly that should never, ever happen. That's not what libraries are about. You know what's also odd is the officer that came up to me mentioned them wearing masks. And, that is correct. In fact, all employees at that branch had masks on. We're in 2026. That strikes me as extremely odd. And yet, maybe that's where we're at. As I looked around on the first floor and the second floor with all the moms with their kids and the older people, and not one other person that was not an employee or staff had a mask on. So why are we in that environment? And why was it a comment that the officer made? I don't know. That just seemed like another data point. So there's enough weirdness going on here, but I wanted to follow up, and I think this is really, really key. So as I was wrapping up and packing up, the manager finally decided to come upstairs and talk to me. However, I was wrapping up and trying to get out of there then because I now had another meeting to go to. So I thanked her and I told her that I would go ahead and send the file electronically because I then had her email. However, it was odd because she didn't show up by herself. She had some very tall individual that was dressed in all black with big black boots on and dyed black hair and this black outfit that quite honestly was extremely intimidating. The individual didn't say anything, but came to the doorway with the manager and then walked away with the manager. Again, I'm in a library. This seems very, very odd. So on my way out, I went by the circulation desk that's upstairs where the kids area is, because that's where the private groups are. And then you pass that before you go down the stairs. And as I walked up to the desk, I asked if maybe I could get help. I had a paper I wanted to print, namely this one, so that I could hand it in. I said, can somebody just show me how to use the printer at this facility? But the somebodies were the two original people from downstairs and the manager and that individual dressed in all black. Everybody else had at least a staff tag on, but the one in all black didn't have a staff tag on. So I don't know what's up. But anyways, the four of them were there. And as I asked, the manager and the person in black stepped away as the manager said, yes, you can help her, and kind of put out her hand towards me. And so one of the two individuals that was so upset apparently about the interaction that happened down below that they had to bring it to the level of calling the police, said, oh yes, I'll help you with that printer, and then separated herself from the pack. I assumed that they were in a buddy system, so probably somebody else would come with her, but that's not the case. She walked over to she had to show me where the printer was. I didn't know that, and then showed me how to load my document on there. Very kind, perfect interaction. But how is it that when she was with a buddy downstairs, there was an interaction that I am not privy to what happened, but called the police, and yet upstairs, the manager doesn't even deem it appropriate to stay with her to make sure that I'm not rude again to her? I mean, none of this makes sense. I don't know what planet they're on, but this is how Silicon Valley and Santa Clara County seem to run right now. It's like crazy town. So I went ahead and after I got this document printed, I went back down to the circulation desk downstairs and I handed it to an employee that I hadn't seen previously in all this interaction. And I showed him what the top line was, what I was asking for. I said, what I need you to do is just date the top of it. You'll make a copy. You'll keep the original and you'll just give me a copy for my records. And then in 10 days, I will come back and I'll just get the response. And he needed to go in the back to make sure that was correct. And that was fine. And I told him that the manager I already told her as well, so she would know that this is coming. And so he knew who to talk to. And then he came out and handed me the paper. Fine, like a normal interaction. But again, when we go to a library, these are families. These are maybe older people, people who just have time to relax. Libraries are no longer really quiet places. You have children running up and down and people talking out loud, but they're a safe place to go for the community. Breaching that and having the threat of being arrested in a public library for not being polite, this has got to stop. So in 10 days, I'll come back and I'll let you know what response that they have and see how they want to clean this up. Okay, have a great afternoon. I'll touch base again tomorrow.